Welcome to the Hermetic Astrology Podcast with Isaac Hill, and we're going to talk about the Zodiac Gardening Guide today, which is the title of your new book. And
Mm.
I guess you know the best compliment I could give you on the book, and admittedly a fairly brief viewing. I didn't really get the time to sit down with it in depth, but I would say it's as much a compendium a la Picatrix, which was a very early compendium of astro magic. I would say it qualifies as much as a compendium as a guide specifically for creating a zodiac garden. I mean, what I found impressive was you're one of the one I call two-headed dragons. I mean, you're coming from the Vedic side and the tropical side. And I love that you mentioned also, the what I call the constellational zodiac that's in use in the biodynamic field. I just thought it was a really wide ranging sample of astro gardening advice and knowledge and so forth. And that was to me the biggest strength.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, well done on that part. It was great to see a really wide ranging, and obviously you've been at this for a while, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been gardening most of my life, and so that's probably like my first
I
love is
think you
plants.
mentioned in the book your mother was a gardener, right?
Yeah, I mean, both sides of my family too. Like my great grandmother had a homestead in West Virginia,
Oh,
um,
okay. What
and
part
then
of West
my
Virginia?
like northern central. Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, like she it's Ritchie County.
Okay, yeah, that's not anything I'd be familiar with. Where I come from is just across the Shenandoah River from West Virginia.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
the
on
John
the
Denver
closer to
song.
Ohio.
Yeah, 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 that's closer. Okay. I've been through there, but don't know it. But anyway, yeah, that was I thought that was cool, we have that Appalachian connection, so
Yeah,
very cool, yeah. Yeah, I started gardening before I was ever in school, man.
cool.
I remember one thing you mentioned, your mother said something about don't plant potatoes in the feet.
Well, that's from Foxfire book, and
Oh,
yeah,
that was the Foxfire book, yeah. Um,
yeah,
so with that, I remember planting potatoes with my father, and
mhm,
he pointed to the moon and showed me it's a waning moon, and that's why we're planting potatoes now. And then we would dip the potatoes in lime to keep them from rotting,
mhm,
which, by the way, is why they say don't plant them in the feet, right? The feet being Pisces. You don't want your potatoes to rot before they can sprout,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. They also say that you'll get like more little nubs instead of a nice big potato. You have like little like toes.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like those kind of little new potatoes sometimes, so that might not be too bad, but the rot, not, definitely not.
yeah, definitely. Not.
So anyway, you've been gardening since you were a kid too. That's
Yeah.
and the astrology part?
Well, so I started off with around 20, I got interested in spirituality. Like got disillusioned with Christianity and all of that, and I got into self-inquiry. So that was kinda like
That's
my
what the
movement into
20s are
my
for,
intro.
man. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I got into, like I started reading John Michael Greer,
Nice.
and got into the idea of magic, and from that, I was interested in the astrological so first planetary magic, like, initiating into the spheres of the planets.
Mhm.
It's kind of this hermetic idea, and, so I started with that, then working with the archangels, and then started working with Chris Warnock and took his class in
Nice.
astrological magic, and so I just went full deep into that. That was about 2020,
Mhm.
2021 when I started, studying astrology full as a serious student
You
as
were
opposed to just,
studying
like.
hermetics, in my opinion, because magic is really a branch of hermetics, which astrology also is.
Yeah.
And the third branch is alchemy, which, in my opinion, farming is alchemy, dude. And the
Yeah,
plants were the original alchemists. I mean, think about it, man. These cats put out solar panels once a year turning
Yeah.
turning sunlight into wood. That's
Yeah.
freaking alchemy, dude. And then they know how to fold that shit up and make it through the winter and start over again.
Yeah. The, wouldn't harden up the green material that they've grown that whole time, and then, yeah, and composting and that whole alchemy there as well with all the
That's total
micro.
alchemy. You turn the
Yeah.
leaves into dead matter and you turn the basically alchemy is transforming lead into gold. That's what most people, but think about it. You're basically turning plant material into dirt and then turning dirt into plants.
Yeah.
That's alchemy. It's 100% alchemy. And I think the plants were basically the first alchemists.
Sure. Yeah,
You know?
transmuting energy
Yeah. You know?
for sure.
Yeah. I
And I
really
was all
appreciated that you had that breadth of take, because a lot of people, they come at astrology just as astrology is this thing in and of and by itself, and I don't think that's really an accurate representation,
and
you know?
it never has been,
Right.
since from Alan Leo, I guess, until recently, there's been this
It
psychological.
was this thing in and of itself, but before that, it was as much astrology was used really in service of alchemy or magic more than anything. It was really
Yeah.
the no, not the one that anyone would take up in and of itself. And William Lilly, yes, you
Yeah, and
know,
there's always, like, court astrologers and
yeah.
so on too, but looking at the Picatrix, they're doing, in order to be a sage, you have to know agriculture and economics and all of these other things too, philosophy.
That's what I love
Yeah.
about being an astrologer, man. It's a
Yeah.
multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, really, is what I like
And
to say.
that's what I love about it too is this it's a language as well, and then it's for understanding all of these all these different disciplines, and it's what pulls them all together in my opinion, especially in the West and also in India too. I mean, like in India as well, it's an initiatory thing, like
Oh,
that's
man, astrologers are so highly respected in India. Like you are absolutely in the top of the social. Whereas here we're like Saturn, we're like the draw stuff. You know?
right.
We're kind of total, mirror, image, but that idea that you just expressed of, like, bridging these various disciplines and astrology being a tool for that. I love that in the foreword, I guess your mentor, Freedom Cole,
Hmm.
uh, he talks about plants as being a bridge between earth and heaven, essentially. Those are my words, but he's using that
Yeah.
metaphor. And so and that's decidedly hermetic. Both of those things that we just talked about, astrology being a bridge between various disciplines and plants being a bridge between above and below, essentially. That's hermetic AF, man.
I agree, and I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of similarity also in the esoteric side of Hinduism and Hermeticism. Like, there's a lot of similarities in how they view the soul and, like, moving through, like, how the planets create karma in a certain way too, like moving down the planetary spheres into incarnation, and then ascending back through them, and then in the Vedic sphere, it's this
Is
there's a
that
similar
right?
understanding of
Very
the
cool.
soul, yeah, and planets. The planets are grahas, they grab you, they're what grab.
Yes. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. I don't know a lot of Jyotish. I know, yeah, a little bit. But one of my favorite things, the myths like the Samudra Manthan, the ocean of milk, like that is
Mhm.
absolute genius to explain eclipses. I cannot talk about eclipses and not use that myth. There's just nothing that compares. Um, and this idea of grahas being graspers, like they grab a hold of you,
Yeah.
and make you their servant.
Yeah.
That's, I think, that was a lesson that I really learned accidentally, that I really fully learned accidentally through plant magic, through plant alchemy.
Mm. Mhm.
I was, writing horoscopes
Mhm.
for a living, just trying to make ends meet. I mean, when it's pretty easy to be an internet astrologer these days compared to when I started. It was not.
Yeah.
Being an internet astrologer was not an established thing. I was doing whatever I had to do, but, writing horoscopes is kinda repetitive. I would get writer's block. So I was like, "I know. I'll do a spagyric tincture for using a mercury herb, and it'll cure my writer's block." Next thing you know, I'm writing a book on what planet?
Mercury.
Yeah. So, he was like, "Yeah, I got news for you, bro. Yeah, I can cure your writer's block, but you're gonna write a book for me."
Not only will I cure your writer's block, I'll give you so much you gotta write a whole book.
You know? And so, yeah, I really appreciate that forward, and in the intro, I really appreciate the the way you set up the beginning, I thought was perfect. The intro, the forward was good, talking about, like, the plants and farming being a bridge between above and below, and then in the intro, you're talking about gardening as a spiritual activity and the
Yeah.
garden as a temple. And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, man, dude, I mean, you coulda spent a whole couple chapters on that." But
Yeah.
I'm really glad it was there, but for me, I'm like, "Oh, man, that's maybe even a book in and of itself." Uh,
Yeah. I kinda wanted to keep this short and sweet, you
and
know?
it is short and sweet, and that's I think that's attractive, especially for your first book. People get a taste
Yeah.
of who you are. So you did that. Yeah.
Thank you.
But can you say a little bit more about those 2 subjects? Like, let's start with, gardening as a spiritual activity.
Yeah, I think that, um, in terms of, like, humans as a biological entity and as part of the ecosystem, we're this keystone species, really, and we can affect our environment more than most other animals, you know? Like, beavers have a lot of power in controlling and changing their environment, and they're another keystone species.
Wolves,
Um, yeah, right,
we found
and
out by accident
yeah.
how much wolves changed their environment. Yeah. When they reintroduced them into Yellowstone, all of a sudden the rivers got healthier.
Yeah, right, and we're, seeing the human as part of this web of of creation on a biological level, and taking our, you hear so much in the world about how humans are like a virus or like, we're destroying the world, and the way that I see it as this keystone species, and as a lens of consciousness, a lens of awareness, we can, as much as we can destroy, we can create, or even more, and that I think is our duty, our purpose as a human, as a
We
biological
were
entity,
made in the image of a creative God. We are here to create.
and specifically to garden. I think, you know, and in terms of living in an ecosystem, like we're choosing what plants we want to keep, and we like cultivate those plants, and we when you look at the Amazon, the Amazon is really a big garden.
Pharmacy.
That Yeah, and the first Spanish explorer to sail down the Amazon, he saw it was covered with cities, and then the next person who came 100 years later, they were all dead because of smallpox, right? So for a long time, people didn't think that the Amazon was populated. And then they
And it
see
got
these
covered with the jungle very quickly because the jungle never sleeps. There's no winter.
right,
Yeah.
right. But there are these circles of terra preta, this black earth, and in those circles, there are a predominant number of medicinal and edible and otherwise useful species. So like these are, the whole Amazon is really a garden, and a lot of the world is like that. And it's only like, with the industrial revolution and so on, that we kind of like lost that understanding of our role. Um,
Mm,
and so in that way, I see it that that's our like our spiritual duty in terms of physical, you know, the biological ecological role.
mhm.
But there's also, to me, and not everybody in this it is necessarily a gardener, right? But for those who are and have a spiritual bent, it can be a spiritual path in terms of this transmutation, and in terms of creation, like you are made in the image of God.
Yep,
um so you by gardening, you are enacting that creative process.
yep, Yeah.
and acting as a steward of the earth.
Yeah, that's a word that I dearly love. I mean, I feel like, I don't know, I guess it's a working class ethos, but, like, every property that I've ever owned, I feel like I've handed it to the next person in better condition than it was handed to me, and that's what being a steward means to me, is that
Yeah,
you are supporting the life that's there and augmenting the life that's there and improving the conditions for all the beings on your that you're, that you have the biological capacity to be the keystone species for,
right.
you know? So it's yeah, it's a position of authority and responsibility as much as authority. It's a
Yeah,
very
responsibility, exactly.
That's a
Yeah.
Saturn word, and
Yeah,
agriculture generally falls under Saturn.
right.
Oh,
And 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 there is this hard work aspect to the Saturn, but there's also a Venusian aspect to gardening. And
mhm.
I see myself more as a gardener than a farmer as well because and I have a very permaculture, oriented like, I grow a lot of I'm growing perennial polycultures, and that's we also grow a lot of annuals and so on. We have an herb farm, and we grow food in that way too, but I like this gardener, um there's with Venus, there's this beauty,
Yeah,
and it's not just you're not just creating food, you're creating beauty.
right.
Um,
Art, it's an
and
art.
yeah, it is an art. I see it as an art,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And there's also another level to the spiritual gardening in terms of and this is really the core of the book is creating a consciously spiritualizing garden, by and one way to do it is by to make a zodiac garden, you know?
Hierotopy is the word that I would use, creating sacred space.
Yeah, hierotopy. Okay, yeah, I like that word. That's
Yeah.
good.
Um, yeah, the garden as the temple,
Yeah, right.
that I think, we tend to think astrology way before it became horoscopic, which is mostly what we're gonna be talking about today is
Mhm.
horoscopic astrology, that is chart-based astrology. But long before it was chart-based, there were the stone circles and whatnot that were
Right.
decidedly temples. I mean, there's no argument that they were creating temples, and so this idea that you could create the same kind of temple space as a gardener, I think is really profound. And, there's a lot of examples in the book about that come from the Jyotish tradition, the Hindu tradition, where that's a lot more, but honestly, I mean, if you consider, this idea of, gardening being Venusian and being about beauty, I mean, what connects us, what makes us feel sacred more than beauty?
Yeah.
And so if you're
Yeah.
creating a sacred space, beauty has gotta be part of it, generally speaking, you
Yeah.
know? And so that idea of creating beauty and creating a sacred space, I think is really powerful and probably yeah, that's probably the most underestimated and underappreciated aspect of gardening, I would say. So that's awesome that you brought light to that, and right up front, right in the beginning, talking about, creating sacred space, creating a temple.
Well, I think it's also something that's been neglected. Um,
That's what I'm saying, yeah. I
and
agree,
so there's yeah,
100%. Yeah,
but it's there too, and even if we look at all of those ancient temples, even Göbekli Tepe, they're oriented to the stars.
oh,
They're
yeah, 100%,
they're this conduit of between the celestial realm and the earthly realm.
100%,
Mm.
and so why shouldn't our gardens be?
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
shouldn't our gardens be temples?
And my orientation is also I'm a very kind of a generalist kind of guy.
Yeah,
And so some people like more of a productive garden, like their homestead garden, their vegetable garden, they're like just producing food. And then some people just have an ornamental garden or whatever. Or some people have, I like to combine them, you know? Usually, yeah, I think that they should work harmoniously. You can produce food and beauty, and medicine and magical plants in the same space, right?
100%. Yeah, absolutely, 100%, I love it, man. Yeah, the generalist, that's what I was talking about in the beginning when I say the book's as much a compendium. That generalist approach results in that product of like a compendium like volume. And I think it's great, man. So
Yeah.
yeah, go
Well,
ahead.
I really appreciate that you noticed that too, and I kind of like it's the Zodiac Garden Guide. It makes it it's how to make a Zodiac garden, but it's not just how to make a Zodiac garden. It's
That's what I'm
also a way
saying.
to
Yeah.
explore these themes and explore how we are and how the planets, the plants, the signs interrelate. You know, and so
There's
that's
a
really
lot
like
of
my
great
goal too.
references in the book. I mean, I was impressed that you brought up, and we'll talk about this specifically a little later, but Vivian Robson's book on electional astrology. I mean,
That's a classic.
it's a classic, and you wouldn't know it, like, I expected it because of the era in which it appeared, I expected it to be a little more Alan Leo modern-ish, but it's
Right.
actually, like, one of the last classical astrology books.
Exactly. Yeah, there's this whole era in the early 20th century where, that transition period, when Alan Leo was one of those figures, but there where they really were, in a way, like, that's more traditional astrology than, like, Hellenistic astrology, which is a reconstruction,
Yeah.
in my opinion. You know what I mean? Because that there actually is a tradition that goes back through all of those angels, through Raphael and Zadkiel, and back into, Ebenezer Sibley, and back
Yeah,
into
I
William
agree. I
Lloyd.
think I mean, it's a brief aside, but I like to call traditional astrology the pre-horoscopic astrology that you do with your face. Yeah, that's
Mm,
traditional astrology for me. I like to call Hellenistic, Renaissance, medieval, the classical astrology, but I get what
mm.
you're saying, that there is actually more of an unbroken tradition, and
Yeah,
that's what Robson
yeah,
was
exactly, yeah.
relating to. Let's put Robson aside just for a minute. I definitely wanna get back to him. Let's start, and I think this was really cool. In part 1, now we're gonna dive into more of the technical, um, part of in part 1, you dive into the different ways of, um, classifying plants according to their correspondences with
Right.
planets and or zodiac signs, and you cover 3 different ways. And I think this is really great because a lot of people will get hung up on, well, so and so says this,
Right.
so and so
Yeah.
says this. They're saying different things. WTF? Who do
Mm,
I believe? Blah, blah.
right.
But what you're doing is you're showing people how they got there, and you're showing them, of course, there's a variance on these things because there's various ways of. It's kind of like the whole thing with, which I love your take, by the way, on the. You're like, yeah, there's plenty of people who use the tropical zodiac. There's plenty of people who use the sidereal. Pretty sure almost nobody's using the 13th sign. I was
Right,
like,
it's a red herring, really.
it's a total red herring. But yeah, this idea that there's various ways to come up and to sort of invite people into that process. So let's talk about that for a little bit. Um,
Yeah,
so this idea that, um, and this before I get started, let me just reiterate, because this is the Hermetic Astrology podcast. This idea of plants being a bridge between earth and heaven, this is part of a greater metaphysical, esoteric idea that is really Neoplatonic and really
mhm,
traditional, that there's this there's a great chain of correspondences,
Yeah.
so that there's for any given object in the material world, there's an angel that governs over that. There are symbols and images. There are animals, there are plants, and there's minerals. So there's this long chain of correspondences that go. And so when we begin to look at how do we form these correspondences, um, it's good to remember that what we're doing is we're situating these plants in these chains of correspondences with spiritual beings, with images, with animals and minerals as well.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
And I
so yeah,
well
I'll let you take it from there.
well, I think one thing that people can sometimes misunderstand is that that the chains are, like, very rigidly hierarchical, and I see it more as a network because each individual planet can embody influences from multiple planets. And that's one of the thing I see a tendency these days is that people are like, there has to be a one to one. This plant must only be associated with this planet. Where really, if you look at the Picatrix, saffron it can be used for Jupiter, for the Sun, for Venus. It can embody the planetary influence of multiple, planets.
Beautiful. It as it's red, and Jupiter because it's expansive. It, the
And I
aroma.
think also it's expensive, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
People can be more than one thing too, You ever
Right.
notice that?
Yeah, I mean, most people have all the planets and all the signs in their chart. Some people have a predominance of, like, Mars and Aries or
Yeah.
Saturn and Capricorn or something like that on the ascendant or the midheaven, and they're very Saturnian or very martial, but most people are a mix of everything. I mean,
Right.
everybody is a mix of everything, but
Yeah.
yeah.
That going back to that idea briefly, that the plant that I used when I did that, tincture that I told you about to cure my
Mhm.
writer's block, it was mullein.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people might not necessarily correlate mullein with mercury, but it acts on the lungs. It's a very
Yeah,
powerful lung, and the lungs in the zodiacal man or zodiacal human, if we want to be politically correct, the lungs are in the shoulders, so they are of the nature of Gemini, right? You have Aries,
right.
Taurus, Gemini. So
Yeah,
there's a correspondence there that comes from what does it do? What is the plant's medicinal value?
exactly.
Um, and therefore it associate now. Now there's another way to look at it. What does mullein look like?
Mhm.
Well, it has these long shafts. It was called the staff of Hermes also because it has this long shaft. But
Yeah,
at the top is this long, head of yellow flowers.
mhm,
And it blooms near in the middle of summer, in the early summer.
mhm.
We could possibly put some solar qualities in there, and guess what? You know what another thing that the most prominent thing that mulleins used for is, eardrops.
Yeah,
It dries out swimmer's ear. So
yep.
drying, the sun is
Saturn.
hot and dry.
Yeah,
Saturn? Yeah, Saturn, some people would say Saturn, and definitely but with the yellow flower and the
that's
drying
sun.
action, we could easily say solar, you
Yeah,
know? Um,
yeah, and there is this and it's like different parts of the plant are used for different things as
yeah,
well.
yeah, the
And
leaves are mainly smoked
yeah,
or in tea to clearing the lungs. So and the blossoms, I mean, when I lived in Berkeley Springs, this was back when I was hanging out at Project Hindsight, I used to go there was a, homeopathy shop there, and they supported the wildcrafters by saying, "Hey, we need X, Y, or Z. If you bring this in, we'll weigh it and pay you cash." And there was mullein, and there were fields of mullein, like entire fields that had just gone, fallow and were taken over by mullein. I was filling up grocery bags full of mullein blossoms and bringing them in there. It was incredible, man, because
that's awesome.
their number one seller of remedies was this remedy that they made
Ear
for
drop, yeah.
summer's ear. And those
Yeah,
are
and it use the flowers for that, but
that's
use the
right.
leaves for the lungs and use the root for the prostate. So it's like each of those are different parts of the zodiacal man, you know?
Exactly right, and so and so that plant can do a variety of things. And when you call on that part of the plant, it's gonna respond in that fashion, so I was able to use it. The other thing, if you think about, in a mercurial sense, it's a plant that does really well in disturbed soil, along
Yeah.
roadways, along bike paths.
Yeah.
Is where people travel, so that's mercurial in that sense, and in fact, the way that it spreads its seeds, I'm guessing that it somewhat depends upon the animal and human traffic too, because the seeds just kind of shake out in the breeze or whatever, and then they get
Yeah, so
transported.
well, some of the natives, would call it, white man's footprints, you know, because
Right.
that's one way the seeds would travel, like, was be on the shoes of
Mhm.
people, creating
Yep.
these roads and
Yeah,
disturbing
you
the
step
soil.
in a pile of horse dung, and then you step on a mullein seed, and, you kick your
Yep.
shoes off at the next stop on the road, and whoop, planted mullein, didn't even know it.
Yeah, exactly. Right, and sometimes planting the mullein is just a matter of disturbing the soil, right? Creating the conditions for it to grow.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an important thing for understanding how plants relate, and how the zodiac and the planets are a language for understanding and relating to the cosmos.
Mhm.
Because it's like we use the zodiacal human, or the zodiac man, or the Kala Purusha, or
Mhm.
the principle of melothesia, to correspond the plants to the body, the human body, through that zodiac man. But there's
Mhm.
also each of the planets in Western traditional astrological medicine. Each of the planets also has a particular function. So, like Mars is exceedingly hot and dry in the third and fourth degree.
These are going back at least as far as Aristotle, and in fact, even before astrology, the 4
Yeah,
qualities of hot, cold, wet, and dry, or the foundation of the elements.
yeah,
Um, so this is very, very classical material, and this is Nicholas Culpeper was he was classifying the plants according to this. He would classify each plant, this many parts dry, this many parts cold, this many parts wet, this
yeah.
many parts hot, for instance. There was another author that you mentioned that was doing something similar that I hadn't heard before. I
Oh,
think it's
Joseph Blograve.
yeah.
Joseph Blograve. He's a hidden gem. Judith Hill turned me on to him. But his book, Blograve's Astrological Practice of Physic, is amazing. It's
Wow.
his, and he lived to be, I think, 80 or so.
It's
But his
another
are the
reason
same.
why I'm calling your book a compendium because that's new on me, and I've been doing this a long time, bro. It's hard to sneak one in on me. That was
Uh,
cool. I was like, "Wow, I haven't heard that name before."
I highly recommend that
Yeah.
book. It's so interesting too, because like he lived a lot longer than Nicholas Culpeper did. You know,
Ah,
so he
okay.
had a lot of time to hone his own system.
Mm,
And his system is astrological medicine, but it's also, and he would not call it magic at all.
yeah,
But
right.
he's giving an amulet, an herbal amulet, a planetary herbal amulet for every every patient he sees.
I'm not a magician because they might burn me, but if you want an amulet, here's how you do it.
Right, right. And he integrates it all very well. But he saw so many clients every day, and he had miraculous cures, by using the system of astrological medicine and magic.
I'm not saying it's aliens, but remember that guy
Celestial
with the big
celestial
hair
entities.
on the
What?
History Channel? Remember that guy with the
Yeah.
big hair on the I'm not saying it's aliens, but I'm not saying it's magic, but if you wanna do an amulet, that's
Right.
hilarious, man. Yeah, so we talked about, like, assigning the plant to a planet, nettles, of course, with stinging and with ragged leaves, very Martian.
Yeah.
Nettles are really, really important in biodynamic agriculture.
Mhm,
They have
mhm.
um, a really robust profile of they're very nutritious.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's why they're so important for herbalism as well, because they have so many important micronutrients and minerals and so on.
Exactly. They have a full micro, mineral profile. And so when you think about it, like in terms of, a lot of people think, oh, Mars is malefic. But if you want to have a robust constitution, if you want to be physically active, you've got to have a healthy Mars.
Yep,
You
vitality, you know?
Vital exactly. And so, so we can link a plant to a planet, and then, of course, because now you would probably say Scorpio for nettles rather than Aries?
Yeah, that's the classic, designation, and one of the reasons there are a lot of reasons, but one of them is that literally it's covered in these little hypodermic needles,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
That stuff what stings you, and
And
it
it grows
stings
in
you,
wet areas
and it
generally.
goes in moist, fertile areas. It loves to grow on compost piles.
Mhm.
Scorpio is the compost pile of the
Oh,
zodiac,
yep,
and
yep.
it's the fixed water sign. So, of course, hypodermic needles are fixed water, and it's a scorpion. It stings. So it's like it fits perfectly in
Yeah,
Scorpio.
yeah.
And it's also red, like, when nettles are just coming out, they have this purplish reddishness to them too,
Mhm,
how they are right now up here in New York. And there that also you see that as a Mars signification as well, like this redness,
mhm.
especially when the sun is in Aries, actually. Like, when they're just coming
Yeah,
out in the
'cause they
early
first come
spring.
out, they haven't developed the chlorophyll quite yet, and that makes
Yeah.
them easy to spot. So you can find your nettle patch when you're going on hikes and whatever. "Ah, nettles, now I know where to find nettles."
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then we have, the idea, so there's a couple different things there that you were talking about. So we're talking about resemblance.
Yep.
They resemble Mars having needles, having jagged leaves, and having a reddish appearance.
Mhm.
And then there's what they do for the body, right?
Right.
Being robust in minerals, they support a vitality. I think, in fact, one of the things that you mentioned in the book is someone said, I think you were quoting someone about, if
If in
young
doubt
girls,
uh, if
young
in doubt,
girls,
give nettles. Oh.
or maybe if in doubt, give nettles. But there was something about, um, no, this might have been somewhere else that I was reading, but there was a quote about, um, young girls needing nettles for health, particularly when they start their menses.
Mm.
Or how do you say that word anyways? I don't even, am I saying it correct? Menses?
Menses? I'm not sure.
Menses?
I
I'm not sure.
I read it. I read it more than say it. But yeah, it's good for that. So it's there's and like, how the blood is both martial and lunar, you
Exactly.
know?
Yeah.
And so it's like the red part of the blood, that's the Mars, and in that way, the
And you're
they don't have a
literally,
lot of iron.
yeah,
What?
exactly. Women have
Yeah.
more of a problem with iron because of the bleeding, and
Yep.
so supporting that with a plant that's rich in minerals would be a natural support for that, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's so it acts on the blood. That's the part where, what part of the body does it fortify? And then there's the actual visual. There's a thing called the doctrine of signatures, which,
Yeah.
one of the things you mentioned, I think walnuts looks like a little brain. So it's
Yeah.
nuts and fruit is brain food, right? Along with fish.
Right.
Um, so there's so there's and then finally, there's what we were talking about with the qualities, which I think is probably the least well known, you know?
Right, and that's something I see a lot of Western herbalists and Western astrologers not really understand, and I don't know why, because it's very clear if you read Culpeper or Blograve
They
or
are
Lilly.
absolutely deciding what's what through the qualities. It's
Yeah.
dry, it belongs to either Saturn or Mars or the Sun.
Yeah, if it's dry and cool, it's Saturn, or I mean, Mercury is kinda neutral, but
Yeah.
drying, and if
Mhm.
it's dry and hot, it's either if it's dry and hot in a medium way, it's the Sun. If it's dry and hot in an extreme way, it's Mars. If it's warm and moist, that's Jupiter. If it's
Mhm.
cool and moist, it's Venus. If it's
Yep.
cold and wet, it's the Moon, you know? So
Really simple, actually, and it's shocking how little that that's something that I go through in my book on Mercury and the elements. It's like just reintroducing elemental theory and like, look, the elements are classified according to these qualities, you know? Um,
Right. And then you can see the difference too between the fire of Mars and the sun,
Yeah,
and the water of Venus and the moon, so you understand them better too, because like Venus isn't like, and some people will also not understand that the degrees, so cold and moist in the first and second degrees means moderately cool. It's cool. So it's
yeah,
like a refreshing creek or a
yeah,
refreshing glass of water.
right,
That's Venus, you know? Venus isn't cold.
right.
Cold is cold in the 3rd and 4th degree. Like
That
Saturn is cold and dry, and the moon is cold and wet.
yeah, Saturn
So
is ice. Venus is
yeah,
like a cool rain on a hot summer day. Yeah, yeah, very
right.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and so that's why you can see Jupiter and Venus are so conducive. They're benefics. They're conducive for growth.
Yep.
Plants like to grow in a cool, misty, rainy day, or they like to grow when it's warm and moist. Those are the conditions that for life to
Yeah.
succeed.
This is an interesting segue possibly, and if we wanna come back and say more about this section, that's fine, but, when we get into elections of, like, when to plant, one of
Yeah.
the things you talk about at length, of course, is the moon.
Yeah.
And, of course, if we get into, like, the moon vis-a-vis tropical astrology, one of the first things people are gonna think about is, like, what signs do I plant by? And those are generally the fruitful signs water signs. They're
Yeah.
called fruitful signs, and plants need water. Yeah, plants, like humans, are mostly water. Um, the question I have for you there that I've never seen, so in technical terms, water is cool and moist.
Mhm.
Air is, warm and moist.
Mhm.
So, I I'm wondering why the air signs aren't considered fruitful in that, because Jupiter is definitely considered fruitful, and Jupiter is sanguine, air, warm and moist. But I've
Yeah.
never really seen the air signs mentioned in terms of being fruitful in that way, and I'm just wondering if you have any insight into that.
That's definitely something I'll have to consider more. Um, I just so there's also like the air signs are ruled by uh Mercury and Saturn and Venus.
Venus, you could make an argument.
Venus you could see,
Libra might be productive, but it's
especially
the
for
fall
flowers.
for flowers, but it's the fall. Now you do plant fruit trees in the fall. I love to plant my fruit trees
Yeah.
in Libra because they're gonna root really good, and if there's any dry the next summer, they're gonna have a lot better chance of enduring that. Um,
Yeah, but the other thing I think too is it's more about for planting by the moon, it's mostly about the moon. I have a little hypothesis that it's not so much. I'm not sure if this is true, but like you have the traditional way of in Appalachia and in England of working with the moon when she's in the water signs or the earth signs,
mhm,
water signs and earth signs, especially Taurus. Um, and then you have the constellational zodiac that as you say it, or the true sidereal, or however you want to say it, that the biodynamic people use. And then in India, they actually use the nakshatras more.
mhm, mhm.
And sometimes those align very well, but sometimes they do not. And my particular hypothesis is just that it's it matters what sign the moon is in, to a certain degree, but what matters more is that you're creating and cultivating a relationship with the moon, who rules all plants. So whichever system you are using to work with the moon, and it's not arbitrary because in each system there are particular things that work and things that don't.
Yeah.
Um, but
Think
you're
about it like when you're training a child. If I train my child to be, a football player, he's gonna become a football player. I could take the same child, train him to be, a mathematician, he's gonna be a mathematician. Doesn't mean that the system of football is more valid than the system of,
exactly.
both
Yeah,
the systems. The plant is gonna respond to whatever system you introduce it to. So, I could use the biodynamic system and get great results. I
yeah,
could the tropical system and get great results because exactly as you say, you're forming a relationship, and if you remain consistent within that relationship, you're gonna get results. Yeah,
And the other thing is that when we're planting seeds, this is more of the conception chart
right,
than the actual birth chart. The
right.
birth chart is when the plant actually sprouts.
And you don't have any control over that.
Right, you don't.
Right.
But you do have control over when you plant a tree in its permanent location, which I think is the most important thing to do is to elect when you plant trees.
That's cool.
Um,
Yeah.
because it's gonna be in that spot for
I
decades, if not
I love
centuries.
your and this is still a couple steps ahead, but we're a lot closer, um, to where I wanna bring it in, but I love your dissection of Robson's tree election because he tends to speak in that semi-arcane language that's like a
Yeah,
little and I love the way you broke it down, so I wanna come back to that, but yeah, the main thing when we start to look at the moon, like I said, one of my first memories before I was ever in school, I was hunting critters and working on the farm. You know,
yeah,
I think I was working in the farm as early as, like, 3 years old, dude. Like, I was literally because what else are you gonna do with the kid? You gonna leave him in the house while you're both parents are no, he's gonna be there, you know what I'm saying?
right, I
And
mean, that's why our Amish neighbors have 12 kids is so they can
there's that too, right?
free labor.
Yeah. But I remember, he planting by the waning moon for roots, and
Yeah,
planting by the waxing moon for fruits and vegetables,
yeah,
and anything above ground, waxing moon, anything below ground, waning moon. That's like that, and that is very widely known, even by people who
right,
don't know. They don't maybe they probably know their sun sign these days, but back then, they might have not even known that, but they knew damn well you plant root crops on a waning moon. That was
yeah.
very common knowledge.
And like you said with, like, the observational astrology, it's something you can see. You know,
Exactly.
you can see in the sky that the moon is waning. I mean, as long as you know it's waning rather than waxing. If you're paying attention to the moon and you're forming this relationship with the moon. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's the waxing and waning, and then, um, there's the whether the moon is bright or fast, and
Yeah.
generally speaking, planting just before a full moon, and this is across many like, the biodynamic system, Steiner definitely prefers the days before the full moon, when the moon
Yeah.
is waxing and particularly fast.
Yeah.
Um, the moon fast in motion, I think, is another thing that very few people really understand. The moon has to be near perigee to be
Right.
fast. Perigee meaning peri, near, G, Earth. So the
Mm.
moon has to be in her closest part because the moon is faster in that part because she's closer to Earth, and so she covers more distance, you know?
Yeah.
Um, now in the biodynamic system, you don't wanna plant on exact perigee because it's kind of like an occultation or it's a little too much, too intense.
Yeah. But right before.
Yeah, just before perigee and near a new moon. So, basically, this is what, in modern terms, you would call a supermoon, right?
Uh-huh. Right.
What's his name? Richard Nolly. He invented that term, and now even the astronomers use the supermoon term, but that's
Handy term. Yeah.
a couple days before a supermoon is, like, the ideal, and now, of course, you want it in the spring for most of your planting,
Right.
sometimes in the fall if you're doing trees. Um,
Yeah, it's
that
gonna depend on where you are, what your local climate is too. Like, it's different in Florida than New York. It's,
Oh,
you know.
yeah? Oh, wait. It's different from Virginia to New York, brother. I got yeah,
Right, yeah.
you guys have some hard winters up there.
We had snow, the other day.
Yeah.
A
In the
hard freeze.
mountains, we might get snow in the mountains in April, but it ain't gonna amount to nothing. You guys can get serious snow in April.
Yeah, there was one time, I mean, this is an aside, but it was like the last day of April, and we had a heavy wet snow, and it knocked all the power out for 4 days.
Oh, man, dude, that's brutal.
Well, yeah, that'll
In the
happen.
winter, getting the last laugh, he's like, "Ah, you thought you were
Yeah.
rid of me."
Right, right.
Um, so yeah, we wanna talk about the moon through the signs. She
Mhm.
wants to be bright and fast. Um, and then we have, of course, planetary days and hours.
Yeah.
Is a very this is something I think maybe it's a little more common knowledge nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. It's getting to
Days
be.
of the week. this year, my birthday fell on a Friday,
Mhm.
and Venus was in Taurus, and
Mm.
it
Yeah.
happened to be the day, and they mentioned this in Picatrix, but it's still, far as I know, I'm the only person that pays attention to this. Venus was crossing the ecliptic north of
Mm.
her, so it's
Okay.
what they call a Guzahar, and
So
it's a
she was
Latinized
on her north node? Mhm.
on her north node
Right.
on a
Okay.
Friday. And
Ooh.
culminating on, so it's Venus day, Venus hour, Venus culminating, Venus on her north node. I was like, "I'm planting apple trees on my birthday. I don't care if it's my
Yeah.
birthday, I'm working." Like, usually I try not to work on my birthday, but look, it was gardening, so
Yeah.
it
Perfect
was,
day. That's amazing. Yeah.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? I was like, "Man, there's no way I'm not." So there's, like, this little sacred um, temple of Venus down there in the bottom part of my property now, and of course, I'm doting on them, giving them extra water, and because they're Venus and they're beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a nice weekend there. There was a couple good elections the next day too for the moon.
You pointed that weekend out very astutely with regard to, and this is a great segue because now we're in that part where we could talk about
Yeah.
Robson's, tree election. I'm almost tempted to pull that up, and let me
Okay.
see if I still have it here, where you quoted that. Let me see if I still have it here. 1 second. Um,
Yeah, and what I liked well, I guess we didn't really talk about the days and hours too much, but that is something that's also transcends like we use that in the West and all of
yeah,
the astrology, from Indian astrology, that's super important.
it's
And
one of the
just
things
like
that we have in common. The days of
yeah,
the week are the planets,
yeah.
and the planetary hours are a cycle of the planets through the Chaldean order.
Mhm.
So it's literally when you invoke a planetary hour, you're invoking that Chaldean cycle of the planets. You're invoking that hermetic order of the planets, of the planetary spheres, via which we come in from the stars down through the Kabbalah, essentially. Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. That's how the soul comes into being, and that's how the soul, ideally, before you die, you want to ascend that.
Right.
As a hermetic, I'm gonna say ideally before you die, you wanna reascend that ladder, but certainly when you die, you're going back up, assuming you go up and not somewhere else anyway.
Yeah.
But but
But those days and hours are used by, like, William Lilly, Nicholas Culpeper, Joseph Blograve, that's a super important part of their herbalism, and
yes,
to collect the influences of that planet is to use they always say, harvest the plant on the hour and the day, you know?
100%, man. I mean, I it's what's interesting is I became an astrologer through a dream where I saw Venus in the sun with the sun.
Oh.
I ended up on a farm here that's covered in yarrow. Right,
Mm,
so, of
mhm,
course, I ended up, yeah, like, because 'cause I've been Venus has been my thing ever since the beginning, and so, I always love to go out on Fridays, the first hour after sunrise, and because it's a lovely time of day, so it's Venusian, it's Venus's
mhm.
day, Venus's hour, and I'm going out picking my yarrow,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
like one of my that's my favorite day of the week, because of that, and yarrow is such a cool plant anyway because it's very multifaceted and it's
yeah,
beautiful. It's really good. Achilles famously had all his soldiers with a packet of yarrow where if you get a wound, slap that yarrow in the wound, bind it up, and keep fighting because it's
yeah,
going to keep it from getting infected. And so, presuming you survive the rest of the battle, you're going to be of use to me at the next battle because you're not infected. You
right.
know,
Mhm.
kind of thing. So it has kind of like a Mars, what is the Latin name of that one?
Achillia,
Achillea millifoil, or
milfoil, yeah, thousand leaf.
thousand leaves. So it has
Yeah.
the jagged leaves like Mars, but it
They're
has
feathery, though.
they're feathery, yeah. So they're
Yeah,
more beautiful, but there is that sort of, but yeah, it has this tradition of use in warfare.
yeah,
Um, So it's a really interesting plant, but yeah, so planetary days and hours, especially for harvesting, I think is where you see that. Planting,
Right.
maybe not as much. I think it's valid for planting.
Sure, I think so too, and it depends what the way I do things too is like I have like a bunch of different factors, and I try to line up as many factors as I can, you know? So,
Yes, sir.
but in the Kala Prakasika in Vedic astrology, what they do more for planting is they say that you should plant the plant on the day of that plant with that planet rising. So that's another, it's not the hour, but it's the planet rising in the day. So that's just another similar.
To me, honestly, I gotta say I prefer that because angularity, look, unfortunately, it cost him his life. But Michelle Gokhale, the only thing we have remotely approaching, and of course, the scientists changed their goalposts on what
Right.
quantifies statistical significant correlation. The only thing we have that even approaches scientifically acceptable definitions was Michelle Gokhale's research on angularity. And it
Mhm.
makes sense because primary motion, the planets rising, culminating, setting, and anti-culminating, that motion of the sun every day,
Mhm.
what we
Yeah,
call what we call the circadian rhythm. 99% of life on Earth, including plants, including humans, including animals, everything but like bacteria that lives at the bottom of the ocean because they don't live in has that clock internalized. It's in their cellular. That clock is so so it makes sense that angularity would be more important than this cycle of,
yeah,
Kabbalah, whatever you want to call it. I think now if you could get all three, that's ideal. And in
sure.
fact, that is the most basic magic formula that you'll find whether you're looking at John Dee or whether you're looking at Marsilio Ficino or the Picatrix. They talk about getting the planet in its dignity, getting it in its hour, and getting it on an angle. Those three
Exactly.
together, that's like the hermetic salt, sulfur, spirit,
Mm. Mhm.
okay? The
Okay.
salt,
Yeah.
the angle, like it's the cross of matter. The salt,
Mhm.
like the dignity, it's got that, and then the spirit is the cycle of the hours,
Mhm.
and
Mm.
so, yeah, if you can get all three, but if I had to pick either the hour or the angle, I like the Jyotish version there, getting it on the
Yeah.
angle and on its day. That's pretty good.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And, it especially with agriculture and gardening, like, you're also you have to be working with the weather, right? So
Weather, supply chains,
yeah,
like there's so many, like you gotta plant when you're able to plant.
there's a lot
So
of variables, right?
if you can get one of those things, well, at least it's Venus Day. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Right.
You
Yeah,
get
and
Venus Day and Venus rising, great. If you get all three, man, you're really in a window of like something's going right, and like what do they say? You're living well
right.
because
Yeah.
the supply chains didn't break down on you. The weather cooperated. Yeah, those
And
are.
then and often for those kind of very special times, I'm probably gonna make a ring or
I'm gonna
something.
be doing yes, a magical ritual rather than plant.
Right. But planting a tree is
Unless
a
it's
good
a
thing
tree.
to do. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
way to make use of that time too, because they're so rare and trees can live so long. So,
yeah,
mm,
yeah. You want to? I mean, we're right at the end here. We probably could
yeah.
call it at this point. Um, I just
Well, I
thought
think we'll
take on that Robson election. I kind of wanted
yeah.
to. That do you mind?
Yeah, let's do it. I can read it if you want. I've got the book here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so and this is coming straight from him. Fortify the Lord of the Ascendant and the Lord of its exaltation, and let the moon be strong and unafflicted by malefics, and in Taurus, Aquarius, Leo, the last part of Sagittarius, Pisces, or Virgo, in this order of importance. So Taurus is most important.
Mhm.
Um, in sextile or trine to Venus. If Leo is chosen, see that the moon is in good aspect to a benefic and a water sign, which is almost impossible.
That's
Let
what makes you wonder. Like, was he? Was he high or what was he thinking?
Well, I looked through a bunch of charts, and it's theoretically possible if you
Yeah.
have, like, the early like, late degrees, early degrees.
Makes you wonder, like, was that a typo? Was that, like or was he, like, actually really advanced beyond what we're capable of understanding, or was he just having a brain fart moment? It's anyway.
Well, I mean, it makes sense that he's saying the fixed signs first,
Yeah,
Taurus, Aquarius, Leo,
right.
because you for a
Trees.
tree, you want a fixed sign,
Yeah,
with the moon in a fixed sign because it's gonna live a long time.
yeah.
Um, and so I guess for Leo, but it's only gonna work for Leo if you have this very special, uh,
Yeah, you want, of course,
yeah.
the moist signs to provide enough moisture that the tree never doesn't die from a drought, you
Yeah.
know?
You need
So that
some
makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah,
And so then also says, let Saturn be direct in motion and in the ascendant, 11th, 5th, or 2nd house in one of its essential dignities, if possible, in good aspect with Jupiter. If Saturn cannot be in the ascendant, let Jupiter be there. And if neither can be thus placed, let the moon be there, or in the 10th, 11th, 5th, or 3rd house, free from all affliction. It is of great importance in all plantings and sowing that the moon be not only unafflicted, but essentially dignified and well aspected, especially by the benefics.
okay.
Uh,
Now read your summary of that, which I thought was just really boiled all that technical knowledge down into practical stuff.
and they also say, like, if none of that can work, you have the moon in Taurus with Jupiter on the ascendant, which makes sense. So these rules are full of wisdom and can, when fully analyzed. Of course, you want the moon unafflicted and in a fixed sign to plant a tree, except Scorpio, because that's the fall of the moon.
Right.
Because fixed signs give stability. The moon's exaltation sign of Taurus is obviously the best place for her to be. And if she's in the fixed fire sign of Leo, we need an influence of water to mitigate the heat and dryness, though a soft aspect from a water sign to Leo is almost impossible. Unless you have the moon at the end of Leo and the benefic at the beginning of Scorpio or something like that.
Right.
A good aspect to Venus ensures that the tree grows well. Saturn, well placed in dignity, gives the tree a long life. Jupiter gives it ample growth and productivity. We want to limit the influence of the hot and dry Mars, and we want the moon to be waxing, signifying growth. And so I got the best chart I found was for April 18th, and I've got it here in this book.
Yeah. That's wild. Yeah, I saw you posted that on your socials, and I was like, "Holy crap." It and I was literally planting trees at that time, dude. I was like, "Wow, how about that?" I didn't even realize I just knew it was Venus day, Venus hour, Venus on her Guzahar, but it also happened to be, like, right up Robeson's alley as well, which is, like, pretty
Right.
amazing, you know?
Yeah, and
But I
this
love your summary there because you're kind of breaking it down for people and showing them, these are the factors we want so that maybe they can begin to think outside of Robeson's sort of dry technical
right.
and say, how else could I get these factors that he's pointing out? And I
Yeah,
think
yeah, like,
yeah,
it's like that's my goal too, is to understand the logic and the principle of why he's saying that, and that's something I learned from Freedom Cole and this lineage of Vedic astrology is, like, they'll take these very, like, complex, almost, like, cryptic, stanzas from Parashara Shastra and then elucidate them to see what the principles are, and then you're like, "Oh my gosh, this actually makes sense if you understand the principles behind it."
yeah, yeah,
And then you can apply it in different ways besides the
exactly.
specific.
That's you can
Yeah,
be creative with it, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow, dude, that's really great. I mean, I that's something that I think, is really needed in this art at this time. There's a lot of old knowledge that's coming back, but it's being applied in really rigid and
right. Yeah,
it's like, dude, just relax a little bit and, like, let's be we live in the 21st century, you know?
yeah, we live in a different world with
Let's
different
honor the tradition,
different.
yes, but let's be creative and, like, keep going, like, we can obviously do better. We
Yeah,
have a lot more tools and understanding and for these guys and a lot of them, most people say that, Pythagoras and all these other cats traveled to India at some
mhm,
point in their lives, but to travel to India was like a major undertaking that you might not survive. You and I
yes,
have access to all of that without even leaving our desk. you
Right.
know? So, why shouldn't we be a little more creative with it and give ourselves the benefit of the doubt that maybe we could even do a little bit more with it, you know? So I really
Yeah, and it's
love
also more fun.
yeah, exactly. I really love the spirit of what you were doing there is breaking down what Robeson was and giving people the idea so that maybe they could be a little more creative with it. That's really good stuff. Thank you,
Thank you.
dude, for this opportunity for reaching out. Um, it's great to get to know you, and who knows, maybe we'll be able to work together again some more in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on here, and I really appreciate it.
Before we go, we should
Yeah.
probably ask the audience if they have any questions
Mm.
for you while you're here. Um, Anybody that's out there in the chat, we had one person saying that her garden is her temple,
Mm.
and she's very inspired and she appreciates the conversation very much. Anybody got any questions for Isaac while we have him here? Don't want to put people on spot. We won't say your name if you don't want to. If we got any shy ones out there. All right. In lieu of that, I feel like it's a pretty full conversation. We'll probably call it a day. And yeah, maybe we'll have another chat a little further on in the growing season. I'm sure you're a pretty busy man. You got a lot of gardening to do.
Yeah, gotta get back out there.
All right, brother.
Okay.
Good to see ya. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, great to meet you.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye for now.